Let me just return into like really the presence of the environment of what's happening here. Okay. The most important thing about all the moments of our lives is to pay attention to our feelings, right? Our feelings are our gifts from our self, from our divine self. Feelings arise from our deepest being because the self pushes up the areas where we have little beliefs or little energies inside, or little presence, little thoughts that we believe in that are not in alignment with divinity, with truth. The truth being unity. You know, it's something like we all talk about, and it's really playful and wonderful to talk about, but to be and to feel is really why we're talking about any of it. So all the moments, the feelings that we have, especially when we're irritated and when we're agitated by things, these are things about us where we believe in something that keeps us in separation. That's why it hurts, right? Because a healing needs to happen there, and it's painful because we don't want to let go. It's the mind stuff. The mind created stuff, and it creates so much justifiable stuff that keeps us apart. And it's so important that when we have those feelings to really look into them, to really look into why they're there and also what they're bringing to our lives. At the same time, sometimes there's signals to call to action. There's signals to say, we get irritated by something, it might mean it's not a good place for us to be or to go, or maybe it's not aligned with our path. That feeling came up, and we have to be the ones to be able to really discern that. But with the underlying presence of, is this bringing me closer to divinity or further away? Am I running from something difficult to face and look at because it's hard for me to accept something about myself? Or am I getting away from this situation or these people because they're not aligned with my path? That leads to my greatest good, So this is like really important when we have these kinds of feelings, because there's kind of like, these are kind of two ways that our feelings can serve us. They can serve us in one, and most of them are like this, revealing something about ourselves, especially if we get bothered or agitated. They're often, almost always, things about ourselves that we don't want to admit that are coming through. And then, like I said, the other one of those is it may be a call to action, a sign for you to say, maybe I don't need to go through this anymore, or maybe there's another place I need to place myself. But every moment and every space that we arrive at, we're meant to be there for whatever reason. And again, it may be because this is where our path is now being laid out, or maybe this is something that you have to, you can determine, this is not something I want anymore. Sometimes that comes up too. So in this context, we're talking about Kirtan, and we're talking about etiquette, and what's appropriate and what's proper. Now, just the way that I learned Kirtan, and the way I practiced Kirtan most of my Kirtan career, I guess you could say, is the most important thing is each person's presence with the group, and also their mood of their devotion. So what you think when you're doing Kirtan, as someone who offers and serves the Kirtan, one of the musicians or one of the leaders, the practice for them is in managing the ego, because you have to use a little ego to serve a Kirtan, no matter what, because you're there, you're speaking, and you're communicating, you're relating to other egos, other people, other personalities. You have to meet them with the same thing where we can relate as a human. So you have to meet them in humanity and introduce the entire group, including the self. to the divine forces. So the most important things with that is the devotion that each person has individually, and their whole journey is about everything that comes up during the kirtan. So, for example, if I'm sitting in the kirtan and I'm thinking, wow, the leader's kind of arrogant. What am I doing? That's mind stuff, right? That's mind stuff. Because it separates me from that person, and it projects a whole story onto another person that may or may not be true. Or maybe the person next to me is singing too loud. Or maybe they're singing off key. And that bothers me because I have perfect pitch in my ear. My ears are trained, to hear music really well, and that's a good thing. But where does that bring us? Where do those thoughts bring us? One, they've brought us out of why we're there in the kirtan. We're there to connect with divinity, no matter what's going on. And everything that happens in our lives are moments where we get to practice staying in unity consciousness. If we've ever experienced unity consciousness, that's a whole other thing. But kirtan is meant to introduce us to unity consciousness, to oneness, that feeling, that essence, because that's the essence and presence of the divine, is unity, is oneness, is true unconditional love, which includes everyone and everything, no matter what's going on or what the actions of the world are. It's beyond the actions of the world. So if we're there and we're having thoughts of, I don't like what that guy's doing, we're not doing the kirtan properly, we're allowing and we believe those thoughts, then what we're doing in the kirtan, we're taken out of what the whole point is. The point is to be a part of the group, but also at the same time connect ourselves, right? And we all support each other in that. So that's really important, because if we choose any thought, no matter what environment we're in, whether it's kirtan or we're at the grocery store, if we choose to allow a thought of judgment over another person that's negative, then we're separating ourselves from not only that person, but ultimately God and the divine itself, because it's the opposite of the divine. What is true unconditional love? It's completely accepting of what you are exactly as you are. Not that none of us need to change or go through things, but all of these things are really important and valuable to look at and see what they mean to us inside. And this is something that I go through every day. This is like the practice of unraveling into love and really surrendering to love. So in this context, I'll tell you a little story that my father told me. Mm-hmm. My father was a minstrel in Christian churches, played music for Christian churches. So this is me being a kirtan leader, is in my bloodline to a degree, you know what I mean? And my father, most of his life, led worship for a community. The greater portion of his life. Yeah. And my father is one of the greatest bhaktis I've ever known. He's a silent bhakti. He loves Jesus so much, but you'd never know it because he's quiet about it nowadays. He used to be more open. But so he told me, and my father's an incredible musician. He's a guitar player. He's an incredible musician, and he had the blessing of playing with other incredible musicians at the bands for the churches that he played in. And my father brought up one day, this is why this is so special. My father brought up one day to one of the elders, the sax player, very special man, an elder in the church. And he brought this detail up, and there's this man in the community, in the church, who sings very loud, and he sings off key, and he throws off the whole thing. And my father said, I feel like we should say something to him to maybe ask him to maybe quiet his voice a little bit so that he doesn't disturb the group, the community. And this was a church of hundreds of people, huge loudspeakers, hundreds of people would get out in the aisles and dance and sing and howl the names of God and the songs, these worship songs. It was some of the most deep worship I've ever seen in my life when I was a child. And you know what the elder said? His name was Lou. Lou, the sax player. Louis, the sax player. How special and wonderful is that? Incredible musician too. He said, I wish everyone sang with that much devotion. And I don't care what he sounds like. We can't forget that the most important thing is connecting and loving each other. And we cannot allow these little things to get in our way of loving each other. We have to stop. We have to stop doing that. That's what keeps us from God. And we justify it, and it's okay. It's okay. But this is evidence that we're doing well on the path, is because it's very subtle. And the deeper we expand onto the spiritual path, the spiritual journey to God, to unity, to oneness, to love, the more and more subtle the mind's tricks get. And I'll tell you now, maybe you can argue and justify, but this is a trick of the mind. And we mustn't give in. We must know that we are stronger than that in our discernment. And say to ourselves in these moments of when we have the opportunity to choose to believe in a thought. Does this thought allow me to love my brother more or less? Does this thought make me greater than my brother? Does this thought make me less than my brother or my sister? Does this thought bring me to a state where I'm in equality with everything and one with God? Those are the thoughts that we keep. Those are the thoughts that we believe, the one that keep us united, that keep us in touch and in that loving state. We should feel euphoric with the thoughts that are true. That's the essence of the thoughts that are true. This is very important. We have to honor all our feelings and accept all of our feelings. And I don't mean to sit here and be like, this is the way that it is, but think about it. Think about how important this is. These are small little things, but what if you scale that same exact thing up to a bigger experience where maybe people are in danger, right? Maybe we have to make choices where our lives are delicate. If you scale that experience up, those exact beliefs will manifest in different forms all throughout our lives. That's why this is so important. So, a little practicality. I'll close with that, maybe. For Kirtan. At least the way that everybody can do things the way that they want to. People are allowed to hold space however they want to. This is the mind fighting to be believed in. Clawing at our awareness. So you give the mind a mantra, a stick to play with for a little while so it's tamed, right? It's a good example of what happens inside. Anybody can hold space however they want to, and it's beautiful, no matter what. If people really want to be like very firm and like have a real organization to it, it's important to know that we all have to work within our own temperament. We all have to work within the space that allows us to connect and makes us, but all the things that I said before are really important for it to be in place during sacred ceremony, during kirtans and things like that. And again, depending on the environment of the ceremony or of the offering, whatever it is, the nature of it, it's appropriate to hold it in certain ways. Now, kirtan, especially Krishna kirtan and even other kirtans, with other deities and things like that. The way that I've practiced, the way that I've learned, is to do it all with a light heart, And again, the devotion is the most important thing. You know, my good friend Millard used to say that your offering, your voice, is almost like, you know, if you're a child of God, right? If you're a child of God, Kirtan is showing up and giving God, like, you remember in grade school as young people, we did projects for our parents, you know, like on Mother's Day or Father's Day, we would do crafts and things like that, and we would take like raw macaroni, you know, and we would paint a rainbow and have like little macaroni glue and glitter and stuff like that, and we would give it to our parents. Kirtan is like that, you know, sometimes. And when you're, as a parent, receiving a gift like that, it's not about how pretty it looks. It's not about how perfectly all the it's like, oh, my child didn't make the macaronis perfect, so I don't really like this gift. You know what I mean? A parent would never do that, hopefully not. But they would accept the gift with love and know that their child was thinking about them and wanted to give them something. You know, that's the most important thing. Not in what the picture is, not in what the voices sound like, but what's behind them, what's carrying the voice, what's pushing that voice out of each human, out of each person, what degree and what level of devotion towards unity, towards love, towards God, towards the essence of whatever the chants are. What is that? That's what's important. And that sounds different in every single person. Every single person will express that differently and at different times. And this is so valuable to know. This is the way that I like to hold Kirtan. So that spirit can really move. I feel the lighter our heart and the looser the mind's constructs on how it's structured, the more freely spirit can move through and inspire. You know, when all the channels are open, you know, spirit can really show up and move through each one of us and speak. I've been a part of prayer circles where I hear, you know, you've been there too, where children would speak the most profound words, and that's because these channels are open so freely. But that's the way that I like to hold it, you know, and that's the way that I like to do it. And everybody's allowed to do it their own way. But again, it's important to know that what all those things that I said before is really what we're trying to get to, right? I think all of us really want to get to that place. I do, you know. And so whatever it is that allows us to arrive there is what's really, really important. And everything else can be discarded, in my opinion. So, yeah. I think that's enough maybe for the video. How do you feel?
Yeah. That's perfect.
Okay.